Hi, welcome to my video on the graph of a parabola by transformations and a table of values. And this graph is going to be on the same one, but I'm going to do it two different ways. So I'm going to graph y equals -2 bracket x minus 1 squared plus 2. I'm going to graph it by transformations on the basic graph, and I'm going to also graph it by a table of values. So that's the same equation down here in B as it is in A, but I'm going to do it two different ways. So y equals x is my basic equation. That's the equation of the basic parabola. And that equation, y equals x, is right here. So when x is 2, y is 2 squared is 4, 1 squared is 1, 0 squared is 0, -1 squared is 1, -2 squared is 4, and we'll plot that. 2, x is 2, y is 4, x is 2, y is 4, x is 1, y is 1, x is 1, y is 1, 0, 0, right there, -1, 1, -1, 1, and -2, 4, -2, 4. So this is the equation. That's the equation of the parabola, and this is the graph of the basic parabola. And notice the vertex is 0, 0 right here. Notice the vertex is 0, 0. These two numbers are 1s. These two numbers, y values, are 4. So this is in the middle, in this table of values, so that's the vertex. Now, when we do transformations on an equation, from an equation, we should obey what we call the RST. And R stands for reflect. And a reflection occurs when this value, this number here, is a negative. And the reflection rule in the mapping notation is x doesn't change, x is x, but the y changes to a negative y. So I'm going to take this table of values, which is the basic, and I'm going to reflect it in the x-axis. So I change the y values. So the x values are not changing. The y values are going to change signs. So -4, -1, 0, -1. So the x didn't change, note, but the y's changed to negative. Negative, negative, 0, negative, negative. And now we graph this one. So 2, -4, 2, -4, 1, -2, 1 negative, did I? Yep, 1, -1, 0, 0, -1, -1, -2, -4. So notice it's opening downward. It's reflected. And the vertex of this parabola is 0, 0. Because the y value is 1 unit on left and right, 2 units on the left and right, you get the same y values. -1, -1, -4, -4. Again, this is still the vertex. Now we take this table of values, and the reflection is done. We're going to do the stretch. So the vertical stretch is the absolute value of A. So A in this case is -2, so it's the absolute value of -2, which is 2. So the vertical stretch is 2. And the mapping rule for a vertical stretch is you're stretching the y value 2 times. So the vertical stretch is on the y. So that means the y value on this table of values is doubled. But the x value doesn't change. So 2, 1, 0, -1, -2. 2, 1, 0, -1, -2. And the y value is double. So -4, -2, 0, -2, -8. -8, -2, 0, -2, -8. So we plot that. So 2 gives me -8, 2, -8, right there. 1, -2, right there. 0, 0, there. -1, -2, right there. -2, -8, right there. So this is the parabola. And I just want to go back to here. Notice because the y values change because reflected in the x, then notice that it's going downward. Notice that in this case, a is 1, positive, so the parabola is opening up. And notice that a here is -2, or negative, is opening down. And so it's still opening down, but notice the y values, notice the vertex is still 0, 0, but the stretch is 2. What do we mean? Well, when we move 1 unit right, we count 1, 2, that's the stretch. You can move 1 unit left, and we'll get a 2. When you move 1 unit right or left off the vertex, when you count this distance, that's your stretch value, your vertical stretch. Notice the y values are twice as high, so the parabola is narrow. Now let's do the horizontal translation. So the stretch is done. Now we'll do a translation, and the translation can be horizontal and or vertical. But let's do the horizontal on the x first. So we have a mapping rule of x comma y, and it's on the x, so this is x minus 1, so it's an x plus 1 comma y. Now notice it's x plus 1. Notice in this bracket it takes, when x is 1, it takes a 1 to make this a 0. And when this becomes 0, this whole expression is 0, so y becomes 2. So this 1, and notice that's the opposite. So it's an x plus 1. So the horizontal translation is a plus 1. That means all the x values here have 1 added to them. So when x is 2, we get 2 plus 1 is 3. We add 1 to each one of these. So 1 gives me a 2, 0 gives me a 1. We're adding on 1, 0, -1. And the y values are not changing. So that's a -8, -2, 0, -2, -8. And so we plot that. When x is 3, y is -8. When x is 2, y is -2. When x is 1, y is a 0. When x is 0, y is -2. When x is -1, y is -8. So we have our parabola. That's the little peak point there. That's a little bit round. That's not really it's round. And notice the x plus 1, it moves 1 right. So it moves from there. So all ordered pairs move 1 right. So 1 right, it moved 1 right, it moved 1 right. And this one moved 1 right to right there. This one moved 1 right to there. So that means now your vertex is 1, 0. So now we're going to take this table of values and we're going to look at the vertical translation. And the vertical translation is a 2. And the mapping rule for that translation is the vertical translation is on the y. And so what this number here is plus 2. So that'd be true. 2. It moves 2 up. The vertical translation is a 2. It's moving 2 up. And that means take this table and we're adding 2 to the y values. We're not changing the x's. So we got a 3, 2, 1, 0, -1. Now we're going to add 2 to each of these because the y values are going up 2, sorry. So 8 plus 2 is -8 plus 2 is -6. -2 plus 2 is 0. -2 plus 2 is 2. -2 plus 2 is a 0. And -8 plus 2 is -6. Notice right here, and it remains true, and I'll go back to here to show you. The vertex is 0, 0, so this is 2's, and that's -8's. Notice the vertex here is right in the middle, so they're -2's, and they're -8's. And notice the vertex in here is 1, 2, because you got a 0, 0, -6, -6. So the vertex for the equation, vertex for this graph will be 1, 2, because this is in the middle of, again, the 2 is in the middle of the 0 and the 0, and -6 is in the -6, -6, 2 is in the middle. So notice, let's take 3, let's graph it now, 3, -6, 3, -6, right there, 2, 0, 2 gives you 0, 1 gives you a 2, 1 is a 2, 1, 2, 0, 0, and -1, -6. And we draw the parabola, and again, you can see that this parabola, everything is identical except it's the same shape because the vertical stretch is 2, but the vertex here is 1, 2. So all ordered pairs moved up 2. So -8 went to -6, and a -2 went to 0, and a 0 went to a 2, etc., etc. So that's how we graph using transformations. But that's under, if you can see what I'm trying to show you, that's what's everybody tries to teach, but it's kind of awkward trying to teach that. I try to do this to explain, but this is very awkward to do if you're on a test. It's good to do if you're trying to understand. But on a test, you would probably do it with a table of values. Looking at the equation, you do it quicker with a table of values. With this equation, the first thing I do is look for the vertex, because this is the vertex. This is what we call the vertex form. I'll explain that later in other videos. So the horizontal stretch, remember, the vertex is the HT, comma VT. So the HT is 1, the VT is 2. Remember, it's the opposite of the bracket. It takes a 1 to go in here. Sub 1 in, and I get a 0. 0 squared is a 0. -2 times 0 is a 0. So when x is 1, this becomes 0. So y is 2. So that's your vertex. That's your horizontal stretch of 1 right, 2 up. 1 right, 2 up. So the vertex goes in the middle of your table. So the vertex, I got 5 places, so it goes right in the middle of 1, 2. That means if you're thinking about drawing it, I'm going to use this graph here. These graphs, the graph of this is going to be right here. So what happens, if you're thinking about a 1, then you'll go with a 2 and a 3, and you go to the left to get a 0 and a -1. So the vertex, the x coordinate of the vertex, tells you what x's you're going to have in order. And now you take the 2 and put it in the equation. So watch, we're going to put a 2 in the equation. So I'm going to take x and put a 2 in a spot. So when I put a 2 in, I get -2 bracket 1 squared plus 2. That will give me -2, 1 plus 2. And so that gives me -2 plus 2. It gives me a 0. And automatically, if this is done right, I can put a 0 right here. Because remember, these two numbers are going to be the same. One on the right and one on the left is going to be the same y values. So I'm only going to do half the working. Now I'm going to put a 3 in. -2 bracket 3 minus 1 squared plus 2. So I'm putting a 3 in the place of x. So I do my bracket first by PEMDAS. So that's a 2 negative, or 3 minus 1 is 2. Then I'm going to square by PEMDAS. I get a 4. And that gives me, I got to multiply to give me -8 plus 2 is -6. So we've got -6 there, got a -6 there. And notice this table of values right here. 3, 2, 1, 0, -1. 3, 2, 1, 0, -1. -6, 0, 2, -6, 0, 2, 0, -6. -6, 0, 2. So this table of values is the same as this. So that's the graph right there. That if I had to do this graph right here, it would be that one. So this is doing it by the transformation of a reflection, a stretch, and a horizontal translation, then a vertical translation. That's the way I explain how to graph a parabola from the basic graph, from the basic table of values. This is how you do it this way. You reflect, you stretch, then you do a horizontal translation and a vertical translation. And remember, if this is a 1, then there's no stretch. The y values stay the same. And if there's no 2 on the end here, that means it didn't move up 2. So sometimes you only do a couple. You might do a reflection and a horizontal translation. You might only do 2. You might only do 1. But I did all 4 here because all 4 is in this equation. Anyway, that's explaining how to work it out by a transformation or a table of values. But the fastest way is find the vertex and graph it with a table of values, putting the vertex in the middle. If you like my video, click the like button, the subscribe button, and notification bell. Visit my math website, www.mathfullyexplained.com, to find more information about me, my videos, and the content. And that's the content that's on my YouTube channel called Math Fully Explained. Thank you for viewing my video. Bye-bye.